I've said it once, I've said it a million times, it's never been easier to become an artist these days. Despite the tariff situation, art supplies are still relatively affordable, and it's also possible to get some semblance of an art education just by being on YouTube. These past few days, I've been listening to a bunch of panels by Lightbox Expo, which, if you don't know, it's essentially Comic-Con for artists and illustrators, where they sit around and talk about the art industry and talk about ways that may influence other artists who are looking to pursue art professionally. I, in particular, was interested in the panel about character design because I'm working on designs for my own webtoon series. And listening to that panel got me to thinking, with countless resources available to younger artists these days, especially via the internet, why does it seem like self-expression and, by extension, creativity seem to be in such short supply in a big old 2025? I'm Isuna, and I make videos, more specifically art videos. And while having a ton of different resources at your disposals may seem like a good thing, and in a lot of cases it is, sometimes it might be just a little bit too much for a beginner. Even for me, someone who's been drawing for over 10 years, the amount of information out there can definitely be overwhelming at times. This was especially the case when I started to learn how to do digital art. Unlike drawing in your sketchbook with like a pen or a pencil or painting on a canvas, digital art can be all of those things at once. That includes learning how to use different layers and knowing how to color and what brushes you can even use. Now, this video isn't really to talk about the intricacies of digital art. I'd already made a video talking about my struggles with this particular medium. I wanted to take the opportunity in this particular video to talk about something that I don't really see a lot of other artists talk about in respect to learning art, especially with all these resources available, and that is our ever-shrinking attention spans. And this is something that I really noticed that a lot of artists aren't really talking about. When we talk about art and social media, we are often thinking from the viewer's perspective, which there's nothing wrong with that, of course. We want our art to be seen by others, that's why we post on social media. And while of course there's good to posting as far as growing your own community, these conversations aren't really had on the side of the artist or those who are making the content to post. Obviously, feeling pressure to have to stay consistent in order for your art to be seen can lead to burnout for a lot of artists, and this is true for both beginners and those who've been in the field for many years. I myself had a burnout phase where I didn't really post much of any art for a whole year on social media. Now, obviously, I can't speak for any other artists' circumstances. I don't know their lives or what other issues that they may be going through. But I think one thing is consistent between artists of any skill level, and that is the creative process. Because at its core, creativity is not an infinite resource. More often than not, it comes out of nowhere, in times that we least expect it. I'm sure a lot of you guys have dealt with the random spike of inspiration at 3 a.m., or if you wanted to draw but had other work or school related obligations. Then when it comes time to actually do some art, you have no idea what to draw, and you stare blankly at your paper or your digital tablet for 3 hours while scrolling social media. And I get it, I definitely am one of those people, and this isn't necessarily the fault of the user. These platforms are designed to get users hooked to using them, and we're addicted to the feel-good hormone of dopamine. Now take everything that I said about social media and apply that to art content. A lot of younger artists or those starting out in the space probably feel the pressure to constantly be improving. And pressure on its own to improve is not inherently a bad thing, but I think if you're constantly looking for shortcuts to improve your art, that's where you can run into trouble. And this isn't just exclusive to beginner artists, I've seen professional artists also run into this issue. I think the whole Josiah Brooks and Ergo Just situation is proof of that. Now, when I say shortcuts, I don't necessarily mean references. I always think that artists should use the references and tools that they have at their disposal. What I mean when I say shortcuts is the expectation that they don't have to study in order to improve their art. And in some ways, I blame these social media platforms for pushing this narrative to begin with. Places like TikTok and IG Reels, as well as YouTube Shorts, they're definitely guilty of this as well, feed on people's constant need for dopamine. And I think the inverse is happening for artists who want to post on these platforms. I mean, think about it, these platforms now are focusing themselves on short-form content, but as we know, art can be rather time-consuming. And the whole notion of having a constant dopamine hit is antithetical to the whole creative process. These apps are supposed to breed creativity, so why does it feel like the opposite is happening? And it's not just with illustration, it's with other forms of art. More specifically, things like graphic design or web design. What used to be very colorful designs in the early to mid 2000s now gave way to flat gray colors and borderless windows. In a world where there's so many opportunities to make something creative, everything feels flat and dull. The only area of art that seems to be bucking this trend is game development. I already made a video recently talking about the beauty of independent games. So if you're interested in topics such as this, don't hesitate to like this video as well as subscribe. I really want this channel to be a place where we can talk about art history in the context of the digital age. And that, of course, involves talking about the places where we post art these days. Because whether we like it or not, that old DeviantArt page that you used to run is also a part of art history. And as these social media platforms continue to evolve, the way that artists deal with these changes is also evolving. All of that to say is that I do think that these social media platforms are impacting the creative process, and not in a good way. I think everybody knows at this point that these platforms are only out to make money. More engagement means more ads, which of course means more profits. Younger artists probably feel the pressure to need to constantly post in order to get engagement and grow a community. Now, there's nothing wrong with holding yourself accountable with your own artwork, especially if you're looking to improve. There's online social media challenges like Inktober, Mermaid, and Artfight that help with this specific goal. The issue comes when artists feel like they need to constantly create to impress the algorithm. Since many of these platforms do run on engagement, many artists feel the pressure to post new art constantly, therefore rushing the creative process and ultimately leading to burnout. And this notion isn't just for beginners, even professional artists are also dealing with the same issue. I think the moral of the story here is seeing our art be a constant source of dopamine is just simply not sustainable. I realized this after posting my art constantly for many years on social media. When we think of our art as being part of a product, we start assigning a value to it. So when we go to post our art on these platforms and they don't get as much engagement as we think they should, the time spent on making said art feels like a waste. Rinse and repeat this process a few more times, and it's no wonder a lot of artists feel burnt out on social media. Not only does this create a pressure to conform our art styles to something that's popular, it also leads to self-esteem issues and the whole issue of comparing yourself to others. It cheapens the artistic process in the fact that artists may feel to need to do shortcuts that they normally wouldn't do. It also leads to artists picking up bad habits, which may negatively impact both their art as well as their mental and physical health. I do think some art content creators, and I'm sure they're not doing this intentionally, tend to romanticize unhealthy habits in order to work on art. And in doing so, they're promoting that behavior to a younger audience. It's already well known that these social media platforms are a leading cause for anxiety and depression. So if you put two and two together, it's no surprise as to why so many artists feel burnt out these days. Even when compared to like 2 to 3 years ago, posting consistently on any of these platforms isn't necessarily guaranteed that you'll see growth. And unlike places like DeviantArt, Tumblr, and Amino, knowers know, artists are less incentivized to take risks with their style, and they may stagnate their skills a bit easier if they think it's going to keep them popular. Basically, artists are less willing to take risks if they think it's going to hurt their platform. I actually want to make a video about these older art platforms to see where they've changed in these years since I've posted on them. DeviantArt is 25 years old, which is hard to believe. That might as well be a century in internet time. It's old enough to rent a car these days. If this video gets 10 likes, then I think I will seriously consider making that a video where I go back and explore DeviantArt. I don't think I have access to my old account, so I can't even show what I used to post, but I might actually make a new one for this, experiment. But back to the topic at hand. Social media can be both a great boon to artists, as well as potentially disruptive to their own creative processes. And that's without even talking about the shady dealings of these platforms themselves. And most notably of that is the whole AI art craze. I've said it previously in other videos, but a lot of these platforms now have it so where users' content is being used to train AI. And in many cases, the users themselves don't even know at this point, nor can they even choose to opt out of it. Gen AI is definitely going to be quite harmful to the art community. But I think it adds to my earlier point that art is seen less as a creative process and more as a commodity. And it adds to the fact that creativity as a whole is being seen as something that's not worth pursuing. That can be said for other creative fields too, such as writing or graphic design or other disciplines of art. If AI is being able to do these things, then why is there even any incentive to learn them? And that further adds to the issue of the shortened attention span. Now, I have no formal art education myself. Most of what I've learned was because I was self-taught. But I still think of art as a type of science, if that makes sense. In order to become an artist, you have to learn anatomy and how to draw shapes, as well as color theory and other design elements. At the core of the issue with both social media and, by extension, AI, is the need for instant gratification. And that need for instant gratification is incompatible with the creative process. I think the issue of having to have everything be tied to monetary value is what's harming a lot of artists. Now, there's nothing wrong with making art for money or working with your favorite art brands to do collabs and stuff. I'm all for artists getting that bag. It's hard out here and everyone has bills to pay. I wouldn't be against getting more sponsorships myself eventually. What I'm talking about when it comes to monetary value is AI tech bros saying that they don't want to pay artists what they're worth in order to get a commission from them. And it's the same AI tech bros that say that these generative machines pretty much are what is making creativity more accessible to people. Never mind the fact that it was because of the elites itself as to why art education is not commonly seen in early education. I truly believe that everyone should have the opportunity to pursue a creative outlet. Now, I don't want to be one of those people that say all social media is bad and that no one should be using it. After all, I'm growing my own social media platform. And I've learned a lot of things since I started my YouTube channel and among other places where I've been posting art. I think one of the main things was learning how to have a healthy relationship between social media and the art that I post. I think since switching to long-form content and live streaming, I've been a lot more lenient with the stuff that I do post these days. And I'm better able to convey my creative process in my art and talk about all the different things that influence me. That was something that I couldn't really do with short-form content as well as I would have liked. Unironically, it's working on these videos that actually improved my attention span. Streaming has also helped a lot regarding this issue of mine. Having long-form content where you're able to better articulate your ideas and opinions is definitely a lot better than trying to cram something in a 30-second video. And allows people to express themselves in a way that isn't as much dopamine-filled as TikToks are. These days, when it comes to short-form stuff, I mainly make clips out of my streams / YouTube videos. And so far, that's been a lot better than trying to come up with separate ideas just for TikTok. It makes people want to engage with my YouTube channel as well as my Twitch channel. And it gets people talking in my comments. I think currently, I'd say when working on social media and doing videos and streams and stuff, my mental has never been better. That said, I do still have moments where perfectionism still gets to me, but I try not to dwell on it too much. All that to say is that social media can still be a great tool for artists, especially those who can't afford to have their art in a regular art gallery. And it does give people the chance to talk to other artists across the world and exchange ideas. I think the real harm comes from when these platforms try to capitalize on said interactions. It leads to competitiveness, which leads to toxicity and a lot of unnecessary hurt feelings. If artists feel like they don't have the space to take risks with their work, then the art community will suffer as a whole, as well as individual artists just trying to make a name for themselves. And these platforms certainly aren't making it easier with the ways that they protect users' data. I do think that if you're going to pursue art long-term, especially posting your art content online, you will have to develop a healthy relationship on how you view your creative process, which ultimately leads to how you feel about your art. In my case, since I focus more on long-form content these days, I'm better able to enjoy the process. I don't feel rushed to put something out. And I've said it many times, this channel is a way for me to learn how I want to do my content. In a lot of ways, it's a way for me to catalog my process in a way that's more, I guess, visually interesting, if that makes sense. It's pretty much just a big diary of sorts. Another thing to keep in mind is that artists might be more mindful of propaganda, but we're not immune to it. We know these platforms play on our mental health, so I take these platforms as a way to show how much I've improved and less about competition. I think being able to look back at my art and see where I started and where I am now has definitely helped me figure out and put into perspective how much I truly grown. And also to remind myself the fact that progress isn't linear. I still have bad days with my art, and I have moments where I feel like, hey, why am I even drawing at all? But nowadays, even when a video of mine does flop, I know what I did wrong, and I try to correct that in the next video. I don't want to dwell on my mistakes because I know that won't help me grow as an artist, as well as a person. As due to all the wonderful support that I received on this channel and my journey this far makes it all worth it to me. Definitely don't take your guys' support for granted. And I have a ton of exciting announcements coming down the pipeline very soon. And I believe more regular streams should be also coming up in the near future. So if you want to hear me yap about One Piece and art and media literacy, then don't hesitate to follow my Twitch. And I'm heavily considering multi-streaming to other platforms as well. So stay tuned for that announcement. But that pretty much covers all that I really wanted to talk about in this particular video. I know it's easier said than done, but if you're thinking about making art content at least long term, these are things that you need to consider. It's so easy to fall into a constant doom spiral where you don't think that your art is good enough, or that your ideas just simply aren't interesting enough to share. But it is possible to share your creative process, while still maintaining a healthy relationship with your art. Me starting this channel in the first place is proof of that, at least in my case. I can't tell you whether you should or shouldn't be posting art on social media. Ultimately, it's up to you to decide the pros and cons in doing either. But also ultimately, it really is up to your physical/mental health, because without one or the other, your art will suffer. I think it's imperative for artists to talk about creating healthier habits to follow. That way younger artists don't feel the need to burn themselves out just to get noticed. One thing I do like about the art YouTube community is that the hustle culture hasn't really made its way here yet. At least not in the way that it is seen in other niches, or even other platforms for that matter. A lot of the smaller artists on this platform talk about the process of art and why they like making art. They don't really talk about any expectations when it comes to engagement, and I think that is something that's going to keep them relatively stable long term. But those are just my 2 cents. And again, if you like this video, then don't hesitate to like as well as subscribe and hit the notification. I have a ton of exciting announcements coming up very soon that I think you guys will really like. So until then, goodbye and take care. Peace.